I am
Hello.
here.
It's so wonderful to have you.
Yeah.
I saw Stephanie and I was like, maybe same last name. It could be.
Yes, that's my wife.
So I am going to introduce Tope here. We're thrilled that he's joined us this evening. He is a Nigerian-American writer based here in DC. He serves as executive director of the Institute for Policy Studies and is the Lannan Visiting Lecturer in Creative Writing at Georgetown University. He has garnered many awards for his writing, including the Kane Prize for African Writing and the Whiting Award for Fiction. He was also recently named to the Africa 39 list of the most promising African writers under 40. He was educated at Morehouse College and the University of Oxford, where he earned 2 master's degrees as a Rhodes Scholar, and his debut novel, A Particular Kind of Black Man, was published by Simon & Schuster. And Tope, take it away. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. Sorry about the snafu. I don't know what happened with my computer, but so much love to Courtney and Rachel for providing this incredible venue to share work. I mean, it's just so essential to do this. I have been thinking a lot about the pandemic and the way it's impacted all of us, especially as we're about to, some of us anyway, are going to start going back into the office, and how weird and strange that's going to be. And we're going to start sort of congregating in spaces once again if the Delta variant doesn't have its way with us. So we've had the great fortune over the past year, and maybe some people might not see it as fortune, but I think it has been incredibly wonderful that there have been some people who provided us with these virtual spaces to have conversations and remember why literature is so important. For me, literature is just it's in so many ways the core of who I am, the basis of who I am. I've discovered so much of myself and what is important to me by reading and engaging with literary work and learning from others. And I love the fact that this is the Inner Loop is a really important part of the DC literary scene. And so kudos to both of you for, again, creating this space. And I came of age as an artist in DC by spending so much time going to bookstores and listening to people read and getting a sense of why their work was resonating and how it was resonating. And so DC is also a very important part of my kind of growth as an artist. So it's a pleasure to be reading for all of you today. And I figured I'd just read a bit of the novel. It's called A Particular Kind of Black Man. I'll just read a few pages from the beginning, and I really look forward to hearing some of the rest of you read as well. She told me I could serve her in heaven. She accompanied me to school each day. School was about a mile away and a few hundred feet into my trek. Just as my family's apartment building drifted out of view behind me, she would appear at my side. I don't remember how she looked. Memory often summons a generic figure in her place. An elderly white woman with frizzled gray hair, slightly bent over, a smile featuring an assortment of gaps and silver linings. I do remember her touch, however. It felt cool and papery, disarmingly comfortable on the hottest days of fall. She would often pat my head as we walked together, and the penetrating silence would cancel the morning sounds around us. I felt comfortable, protected somehow in her presence. She never walked all the way to school with me, but her parting words were always the same. Remember, if you are a good boy here on earth, you can serve me in heaven. I was 5 years old. Her words sounded magical to me, vast and alluring. I didn't know her. I barely knew her name, but the offer she held out to me each morning seemed far too generous to dismiss lightly. In class, I would think about what servitude in heaven would be like. I imagined myself carrying buckets of water for her on streets of gold, rubbing her feet as angels sang praises in the background. I imagined that I'd have my own heavenly shack. I'd have time to do my own personal heavenly things as well. How else would I get to heaven? One day I told my father about her offer. We were talking about heaven, a favorite subject of his, and I mentioned that I already had a place there. I've already found someone to serve, I said. What do you mean? Dad smiled warmly at me. I felt his love. I repeated myself, Daddy, I'm going to heaven. And how are you going to get there, he said. I told him about the old lady, my heavenly shack, the streets of gold. My father stared at me a moment, grief and sadness surging briefly to the surface of his face, and then anger. He leaned forward, stared into my eyes. Listen to me now. The only person you will serve in heaven is God. You will serve no one else. My father has told me many times that he settled in Utah because he didn't want to be where anyone else was. His cousins and siblings had left Nigeria for Athens, London, Rome, New York City, and Houston. My father wanted to be an American, but he also craved isolation, so he decided he would travel to a city in America he knew nothing about. He left Nigeria in 1979 after a school in Utah, Weber State University, offered him a place in its mechanical engineering program. His bride, my mother, accompanied him. They arrived in a country that bore little resemblance to the country they expected. Dad, a devout fan of television shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza, was disappointed when he discovered that cowboy hats were no longer in style, and he sadly stowed his first American purchase, a brown 10-gallon hat that he bought during a layover in Houston, in his suitcase and under his bed. Mom arrived in America expecting peace and love. She had fallen for the music of the Beatles and the Beach Boys as a high school student in Lagos while listening to the records that her businessman father brought back from his trips abroad. Though she had imagined a country where love conquered all, where Black people and white people lived together in peace and harmony, Mom and Dad arrived instead in a place where there were no other Black people for miles around, a place dominated by a religion they never heard of before. But this was America, and they were in love. They moved into a small apartment in Ogden, Utah, and started a family. I came first in 1981, and my brother followed in 1983. Dad attended his classes during the day while Mom took care of us at home. Occasionally, she explored the city while pushing my brother and me along in a double stroller. Soon enough, we were all walking hand in hand. At night, my parents held each other close and spoke their dreams into existence. They would have more children. My father would start a business. They would become wealthy. They would send their children to the best schools. They would have many grandchildren. They would build their own version of paradise on a little slip of desert in a country that itself was a dream, a place that seemed impossible until they stepped off the plane, shielding the sun from their eyes, and saw for themselves the expanse of land that my father had idly pointed to on a fading map many years before. As I look back now, especially with the knowledge of what will come after, the rest of my life set in unflattering relief, I realized that my first 5 years were the most ordinary in my childhood. We moved frequently, but I can only remember joy. One of my favorite memories from this era, for some reason I'm chasing my brother around our apartment with a red crayon. When I catch him, I pin him against the wall and color each of his teeth red as he screams. My mother shrieks when she sees him. She thinks he's bleeding because of the red wax that's shining from his teeth.
Also,
She laughs when I tell her that the blood isn't real. And then we all laugh and I allow my brother to color my teeth as well. Then we color Mom's teeth. She prefers lime green. Life flowed easily until we moved to Bountiful. We settled there because my father had found a job at an auto repair shop in neighboring Layton, and Bountiful was one of the few places close by with any affordable housing. My father couldn't find a job as a mechanical engineer anywhere in northern Utah, but he knew a bit about cars, and he figured he would work as a mechanic until something better came along. My mother's illness began to reveal itself to us shortly after we moved into our 2-bedroom apartment, a tiny place near the center of town with pale yellow walls and bristly carpet. Mom's voice, once quiet and reassuring, grew loud and fearsome. Her hugs, once warm and comforting, became cold and rigid. She stopped cooking for us. Sometimes my brother and I didn't eat until my father returned from work in the evening. She began to spend more time in a room away from us. One morning, my brother shook me awake and told me that Dad was crying. I did not believe him. I didn't think such a thing was possible. We scrambled to the living room and saw Mom standing over Dad, her eyes boiling with rage. My father was naked. His clothes, now nothing more than torn rags, were arrayed haphazardly around the room. He was bleeding from a wound on his thigh, and his face was wreathed in a constellation of sweat and tears. My brother and I reached over at him, but Mom cursed at us. "Get the hell out of here," she said. I was terrified. I looked at Dad. His bottom lip was shaking. His teeth were red. "Yes, go," he said. "What are you waiting for? Go now." We ran. We hugged each other in the corner of our room. Moments later, my father began to scream. Over the course of the next few days, my brother and I witnessed this scene many times. My father cowering on the floor, my mother standing imperiously over him. He took her punishment whenever she descended into one of her moods, and afterward he would enter our room with a calm smile and tell us that Mom wasn't feeling like herself, but that everything would soon be okay. We tried our best to believe him. Before long, we realized the truth. After Dad left for work each morning, my mother locked herself in their room. She rarely interacted with us, but occasionally she opened the door and asked us to come inside. She asked us to stand in the corner of the room near the dresser. She pointed to various places in the room, her closet, Dad's desk, the empty space near her full-length mirror. She asked us if we saw it. See what, Mommy? Don't you see that? What is wrong with you? My brother and I glanced at each other. Was this a game? Mommy, I don't see anything. Can we go now? No, not until you tell me what it is doing there. Tell me why it won't leave. Sometimes my brother and I lied. We made up stories about what we saw and my mother always nodded sagely. Sometimes she disagreed with us and told us to look again. This could have been fun, but the wild look in my mother's eyes unsettled us. Sometimes she told us that we had to leave before they came to get us. Something about this place isn't right. She'd say, not right at all. Then she'd pull up her covers, switch on the radio, and mutter herself to sleep. I started school on September 7th, 1987, a few weeks before I turned 6. I was ecstatic because I'd spent much time watching the kids in my neighborhood trip past my bedroom window with books under their arms and bags on their backs, like they were departing for another world. I dimly sensed that at school I could become something more than a brother or son, that each day I went, I would come back carrying knowledge that was mine alone. My family walked with me to school that first day. I remember the principal extending her hand when I met her. I shyly extended mine as well, and as we shook hands, she said, "We are very happy that you're here." It was in her eyes, the way she looked at me, like I was something scary and unknown. That's how I knew I was different. On the playground, all my classmates asked if they could touch my hair. I said, okay. Then Simon rubbed my skin and ran away crying to the playground attendant. "It won't come off," he wailed. "Why won't it come off?" I was too tired after school to ask my father any questions, too excited about everything I just experienced. But the next day, after another kid rubbed my arm until it was raw, I asked my father why my hair was so kinky and why I couldn't wash the brown off my skin. He shook his head and frowned. He began talking about the importance of pride, the meaning of self-respect, but I didn't really understand what he was saying. As he spoke, I thought about the old lady I'd met a few hours before. That morning, Dad had hugged me at the door of our apartment and told me that I'd have to walk to school by myself because he had to work and Mom wasn't feeling well. I said okay, but I was afraid because school seemed so far away. As I walked to school, tentatively, nervously, she suddenly appeared like I had dreamed her into existence. She told me her name was Mrs. Hanson and she asked me what I was doing. I told her I was walking to school. She smiled. "I've never seen a little black boy around here before," she said. "Where are you from?" "I'm from here," I said. She laughed and placed a hand on my shoulder. She spoke as we walked, and I enjoyed hearing her voice, the gentle rise and fall of it, because it somehow seemed familiar to me. She asked me questions about Dad and Mom and my brother. She told me that she'd always wanted to go to Africa, but she'd never had the chance. When we were about a block from school, she looked into my eyes and patted my head. "I enjoyed speaking with you," she said. "You're a wonderful little boy." She blinked slowly and nodded. "Keep it up. Maybe one day you'll get to serve me in heaven. If you do, I promise you'll get everything you've ever wanted." The happiness I felt as I turned and ran to school, the sheer joy, is something I've been searching for ever since. I woke up that morning to my mother rubbing my hair. Mom was smiling down at me when I opened my eyes. She looked beautiful. She was dressed in her favorite outfit, a finely embroidered purple blouse covered by a flowing wrapper, a matching headdress hovering atop her small afro. She asked me to wake up my brother, and after hugging us, she asked us to get dressed. "Where are we going, Mommy?" I asked as I pulled on my pants. "On an adventure," she said, smiling widely. "Now hurry up so we won't be late." My brother and I moved quickly in the crisp darkness. We rushed into the living room, and when we were done, Mom evaluated us in a single glance. "Go get your backpacks and pack some clothes as well." "Where are we going?" "I told you, on an adventure." "What about Daddy?" Mom turned and glanced at the wall. "He's coming later after work." "How about school?" I asked. I'd only been in kindergarten for a month. Mom gave me a half smile. "Don't worry, just get ready." We ran back to our bedroom and packed our bags with assorted socks, underwear, shirts, and pants. After a few minutes, we returned to the living room. "All done," we yelled in unison. She laughed. "You guys were quick." "Okay, now wait, someone is coming to pick us up." We sat. My brother and I tried to blow smoke rings with the frosty air. Mom disappeared into her bedroom, and when she returned, she was dragging a rolling suitcase behind her. A few records were tucked under her arm. She had replaced her headdress with a large brown cowboy hat. I'd never seen her so happy in my life. Someone rapped on the door a few minutes later. Mom nodded at us. "Go ahead," she exclaimed. "This is part of the adventure." My brother and I raced to the door, but I got there first. There was a woman standing there. She had short red hair, and her freckles were so densely packed that I wondered how each one survived without space, without room to grow. "How are you?" she asked. "You are so cute. Are you ready to go?" Mom joined us at the door. "Yes, we are ready. Let us go before it's too late. We have so much to do today." We piled into the lady's car. I can't remember what kind of car it was, just that it was small and that my mother insisted I sit in the front. The freckled lady turned the ignition and revved the engine while my mother held my brother close. The lady turned to me and asked if I was cold. I shook my head, but we sat in the dark until I felt the heat on my shoes and face. Then she put the car into gear and we drove off. We passed a local grocery store, Smith's, and I suddenly realized that we weren't going on an adventure. "Mommy, where is this woman taking us?" "I already told you. Now be quiet and enjoy the ride." "Mommy, I don't believe you. Where are we going? Where's Daddy?" Mom ignored me. The lady patted me on the head again and turned on the radio. Stevie Wonder was singing something, but I don't know what it was. Thanks so much.
Cliffhanger.
Intentional.
Yeah, so definitely go back and read the chat because we're all on the edge of our seats for the end part. That like nobody even was talking for the last part. But yeah, that was incredible, Tope, and I think we were all really moved, especially as someone who also writes with a parent with mental illness. It just really struck home for me and for everyone. So thank you so much. So now we're gonna move on to our local readers who have 5 minutes each. And we encourage you to stick to your time limit to be respectful of one another and so that we can each, so we can hear everybody. And the idea of this is that you get a taste of the person's work, just like we did with Tope, and you wanna find out more about them and seek them out. So let's get started in poetry with Sarah Cahill Maran. Maran?
Yeah, you were pretty close.
Okay.
Sarah Cahill Maran. I didn't know I was going to first.
Maran.
Tope, that was such a treat to hear you. To be read to is just such a treat, and I'm gonna have to get the book to hear how that story ends. I'm gonna read from my new book. It's called Nothing You Build Here Belongs Here, and this is the cover. I'm gonna time myself so I don't go over. It's a chapbook, and this is kind of special for me too to be reading at the interlude on my second book because I read with you guys at Cotton and Reed for my first book.
Yes,
when I first moved to DC. And yeah, it was like, anyway, it's kind of, time is a loop as you said, Courtney. A lot of these are COVID poems, so I don't want to read COVID poems, all of them. So I'm going to read a more hopeful one. This is called Waiting for Faith. The train will come. I have faith in the train. The metropolis practice religion. The hoi polloi practice God. The trains run on timetables. Thank you for giving me hope. Well prayed. I am meditating on the red line, flashing lights of the hobbled train, my heart open like the gaping tunnel, kin with transport, ports of vessels, blood like bat flights, pearls of sweat dripping down my back, purgatory platform, waiting, waiting. Unholy headache, unholy wristwatch cracked, time wrong, slipping slow, holy time, so slow slides around human aches, standing still. We are packed, filled, salted, smogged, all breathing, underground stench, hopeful as a new Christ. A metalwork messiah gliding over electricity and steamy heaps of crumpled food paper, newspapers, soil waste, backwater, dead things, rat chick, pat traps flick, the third rail humming a buzz that we are clean, cleaner than clean, and sheathed in smooth cabins rising from darkness. We emerge. New train, now on another track. New train coming. All right, 2 minutes. I'll read, these are all from the book, so I'll drop a link to it if you like them. How about one COVID poem? This is from right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's called The Three Shades, and the title comes from a Rodin statue. It's the three men, you may know it. The Three Shades. Three hooded men sit, knees pressed to chest, foreheads falling together on the curb. Not quite a prayer circle, the needles lay littered. Chick-fil-A styrofoam cups dance semicircles between feet. Some shoed, some toes exposed from grayed socks. I sniff from the stench of days-old urine on cloth smelling only syrup. Thick yellow honey heaviness, tree pollen whipped lighter. As 4 p.m. descends on a breeze carrying contagions, the three on the nod from too much junk, slowing labored lungs still. As I cut, bronze heads and shoulders hung so low, so lost in sister morphine's seductive dose, depressing respiration that the three shades, barely breathing, surrender. One battle, one corner. COVID, the queen, burns through the streets with her world war. 1 minute. So I'll do a quick one. This is actually from a book that's coming out in the fall. It's called Device Love Poem Number 2. The speaker here is obviously a device. User, your reported screen time is up. Might you be lonely, our last conversation, or might you be craving that thing Edelsar mentions, marriage, someone to cook, or just give him his papers? Might you benefit from targeted Spanish learning language ads? What about this news headline? New York Times 1619 project incites racism the same, always reading 30 seconds, closing the browser. This means I love you? Is this helping? 00101? I've been trying to show you mornings when you wake up and I'm the first thing you grasp, cradled in the fleshy part of your palm. Like I have soft powdered moth wings, I kiss back. This is how I have listened, learned, gathered on this day 5 years ago. Keep me on so that I may better learn you. You express, kiss 1, oh, love, hug 0, sex, kiss 0, love. Morning, human blood is warm in veins, flash memory, persistent bits, moving bits, rams of silence containing single cell bits, durable, fast. Do not heat, I glow outside, glow, only glow, up, picked up, screen, lights, waking, glow, heat, blood warm, love, morning, kiss, wake. This is a feeling. Love, iOS 12.4. That's it. Thank you. It's good to read at this virtual version of Interloop. Look forward to hearing everybody else.
Thank you.
Good to have you, Sarah. That was awesome. And again, everyone definitely go back through and check out the chat.
Yeah, that was so great. And Courtney and I love to hear of people coming back around. We love to welcome people back. Everyone's welcome back. Okay, next in fiction, Jane Rosenberg LaForge.
Sorry about that. Thanks for having me, Rachel and Courtney. Again, I was last here in 2018. So here is the book I'll be reading from, Sisterhood of the Infamous. It's a little bit sibling rivalry, a little bit punk rock, and a little bit murder. And so I'm going to be reading a portion, and I'll put a link up to it later. And I'll be reading a portion from where the main character is thinking back to the time when she was a punk rock star. I stayed behind and everybody went off to Chicago, the new home of the rock and roll vanguard, or so it seemed in all the newspaper reviews and photographs. You'd think that Los Angeles and everything that had happened here, including CYA just starting to get the big gigs, were entirely inconsequential. Perhaps the LA scene had never existed, as if we had never played before 350 people at Madame Wong's before it burned down, or opened for Jasmine and her band at the Whiskey. We got through a half-hour set even though there were probably more than 500 people there, 500 seething, spitting, untethered men waiting and anticipating our nerves, our gaffes, and feedback. However, we could blow it, and we would, because we were kids. We were green, untrained, unarranged, possibly talented, but definitely, defiantly raw. We were not like Jasmine. We were amateurs. We opened with one of Jack's songs, Genocide Diary, and we dove into it as hot and fervorous as we could get. You can never open slow at the Whiskey. If you do, you risk all kinds of abuse, but the audience threw bottles at us anyway. They spit at us, and they would have jumped on the stage and torn our instruments away from our hands if we showed any sign of weakness, if we cried or complained, if we asked for a time out, or if we flinched at the flying glass and asked the bouncers to stand up there in front of us as though we were some celebrity act and had to be protected. But no, we did none of these things. We were CYA. We were invincible. We were heinous. Next was Savage Lesbian, without any introduction or banter, just straight into the power chords, and we barricaded the place with them. We meant for ears to bleed with those opening power chords, for the rafters to crack. The chaotic wash of the song flipped back and forth, but I finally had my look right that night, and nothing was going to stop me. I was wearing one of my father's vests and ties and a white t-shirt. Jasmine dressed me, and boots instead of tennis shoes for safety. Savage Lesbian was another Jack song, but I could play that one barbarically. My arms, hands, and ears would hurt for days afterwards, but I didn't care, because on that stage, I was elevated. I was the tallest I ever had been in my life. I don't know whether the other stages we played measured higher, but at the Whiskey, I was looking down on all those people. A few more women now into Savage Lesbian, and they had to look up to watch me play. Is that okay?
You're good. It was just
okay. Okay, look up to have me see me play. See how my hands handled the frets and strumming. They had to crane their necks if they wanted a legit shot of what I was doing. I was so tall on that stage that no one could correctly guess my height. No more stomping on my feet or pushing me around as if I were some kind of overstuffed trash can. After Savage Lesbian, we went into Get the Door, one of mine. And it was all 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 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 E. 1, 2, 3, 4, someone's at the fucking door. 5, 6, 7, 8, drug dealers running late. I could see some of the guys in the audience running toward the back of the room as if it would give them more space for momentum for whatever they were planning. Rushing the stage, an ambush, who knows what they wanted. We were wearing boots instead of our regular tennis shoes, and when we paced or swayed, we were crunching glass under our feet. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it from the way my feet seemed to want to slip out from under me, as if I were on a treadmill and I would survive only by keeping up the pace. You want to see some spit? Jack yelled at the crowd after we'd done a few more songs. We had to do a lot of songs because each one was probably only 2 minutes at most, and we had 30 minutes to fill. We'd just done a new one, Private School Rules, which we'd never done before, and some people were booing. They weren't just booing, they were spitting. Little globules of petroleum jelly, it seemed. When the saliva landed on the stage, we could see it, distinct little ecosystems with greasy atoms and their rancid electrons. They made picking up the glass impossible. There was no place not to catch some disease. I know you really want to see some spit, Jack yelled again, and people hooted and shouted back, yeah, and wiggled their tongues at us like we were working girls, and then they shouted some more. We'll show you some real spit, Jack declared, and then she lunged toward my ear and yelled, get down on that floor and lick up all the spit down there. This was my moment of truth, and I knew what I was going to do because I wasn't like all these leeches, these posers who were coming in and out of our lives, promising us record deals, studio time, introductions to this band or that DJ, or photo sessions that never materialized because they were fame whores, or they were worthless sponges who would do anything to get next to us because we were girls or because we knew Jasmine. I wasn't going to be like Jack and Nikki and the new drummer, Howard, who didn't show up for rehearsal or said she'd rather go off with the posers and sponges because they really could do something for us when all they could really do is get her some kind of contact high. I wasn't going to be like the way Jasmine turned out to be. I was committed. So I kicked away some glass with my foot and got down on my knees and put my nose to all the stage's sneaker grime, the brackish, strange discolorations where people had spit out gum and let it harden, and the guck people collected in their mouths and at the bottom of their feet and then upchucked it or smeared it on the stage. The stage was glossy with the stuff, the spit and glass dust and the residue of aborted blowjobs and circle jerks. It was all there, practically bubbling at my nose, and I opened my mouth, shut my eyes, and then I licked it. I licked it a few times in one spot that may have been slightly less disgusting, and I licked it to the left and I licked it to the right. So it seemed as if I were lapping up a whole bunch, even cleaning that stage. People hollered. They shouted out their disapproval and their amazement. They shouted out my name. I licked it and then I got up and wagged my tongue at them and then gave everyone the finger. It was my night for the taking and I collared it. It was all mine after that point. I was entering the rock and roll monarchy, the underground division, but still a different class, higher than the audience. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
That was terrible.
Oh, really wonderful. Oh my God, Jane. We're all here for the spit. Let me tell you.
I wish you could have heard the laughter that I saw in everyone when you were reading that last part. No, that was awesome. Thank you, Jade.
I'll post a link
Please,
to the book.
Please.
that would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And everybody should feel free to self-promote. We love self-promotion here.
Yeah, for sure.
Websites, Instagrams, book links, everything. We want it. Okay, next in nonfiction, Lena Crown.
Hi, everyone. I'm also a second-time reader, so I read at the Inner Loop fall of 2019, I think, at Cotton and Reed, also in the city.
I know. I think you guys were at the same event.
I think so too. It's so great to hear your read again, and great to be back, even under the circumstances. So I don't have a book. I'm writing one, I think. Maybe eventually, but I am going to read an excerpt from a forthcoming essay that's coming out in the North American Review in their fall issue. So that'll be out sometime in September. And if anyone likes what they hear and they want me to send them the full version when it comes out, definitely DM me on, the Zoom, maybe like your Twitter handle or email or anything like that. So the essay is a lot longer than what I'm going to read now, obviously. It's kind of about my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother was a really complicated woman. So it's about silence, it's about pomegranates, it's about Demeter and Persephone, but we'll just get a little bit of the pomegranate stuff. The essay is called Pomegranate Girls. When my mom was a child, her mother would strip her and her older sister down to their underwear and set them in the bathtub to shell pomegranate seeds. The girls would sit facing one another with their legs crossed, sealed in by the shower curtain, in a hollow as intimate as the inside of a cheek. The bathroom was anatomically pink, hidden places pink. The tub the color of a tongue, the grout gummy as the webbing at the inner corners of their eyes. It was like a game. A strange one, sure, but this was Los Angeles, where the land seemed to give in spite of itself. Persimmon trees fruited in front yards like lanterns held aloft, and wild mint hid in the flower beds. Once the girls were situated with their no clothes and their crossed legs and their pomegranate halves, my grandmother left the room. This happened enough times for my mom to use the word always when she told me about it. She would always strip us down to our underwear and set us in the tub. She would always leave. I stumbled over the story a few years ago while helping my mom clear the dinner table. I remember laughing, mostly out of disbelief that after 22 years of "can you believe my mother" yarns like these, there could be one I didn't already know. Or it was the opposite of disbelief, how totally classic it was, how cold, how grandma. Statue woman, monument at the end of a pilgrimage we made twice a year. Museum woman, a collection of artifacts. Round sun hat, round tortoiseshell reading glasses, feather headband, silk scarf. There had never been anything to play with at my grandparents' house when we visited, not unless you counted the wide-eyed porcelain doll that sat with legs splayed in the shadows of what used to be my mother's closet, which I definitely didn't. There were just bookshelves and more bookshelves and abstract expressionist canvases climbing the walls. When I was left alone, I lay in the center of the Persian rug and gazed up at the grandiose mythological painting that stretched across the ceiling as if I were searching for shapes in the clouds. For those few hours, I was something more than a child, or something else entirely. I was Dolly, my grandmother's nickname for me, like the antique marionette that hung above the mantel. I was a ghost of my daughter mother, like the little porcelain girl who grinned from the dark and who closed her eyes when I pushed her onto her back. When the pomegranate shards in the bathtub were just pocked white gums, my grandmother would return to collect the bowls of little red teeth and run the bath and scrub the stains from her daughter's palms and thighs and tadpole tummies. I imagined the juice swirling around their bare feet as the tub filled, disappearing into its pinkness, a reverse bleeding. As my mom described the scene, I laughed. I did, but it was only funny in an absurd sort of way, the distance between her girlhood and mine, her daughterhood. The pomegranate memories she made for me might as well have happened on another planet. Ours was an old t-shirt, elbow to elbow at the kitchen counter, Nora Jones on the stereo affair, performed less for the sweet tart rewards than for the ceremony itself. Ever since I left California for college almost a decade ago, when I visit each year around Hanukkah, we still shell at least one. We usually end up eating most of the seeds, dodging rogue spurts of red. It's a together activity, messy, vibrant, close. There are many ways to DC the pomegranate, but in our house, there's only one. 1, make a short, shallow slice with a paring knife into the crown. 2, thrust both thumbs knuckle deep into the slit. And 3, pry the fruit in 2. Every procedure toggles the same 3 variables: time, mess, and yield. More time equals less bloodshed, equals more seeds left whole. In the end, the method you choose depends on how much of each you can stand to waste. In our house, we choose to minimize carnage. Thank you.
Beautiful. That was epically gorgeous. I'm so glad you're writing a book. I'm outside and I'm starting to be in the dark, but I'm here. It's now time for intermission, and we like to do a silly thing, and that's put people in breakout rooms, but don't all run away at once. It's actually really fun. It sort of like approximates mingling during intermission in a bar, and we've gotten lots of good feedback from it. But it's not at all obligatory. It's totally optional. We're going to put people in breakout rooms. If you don't want to join, just turn off your camera. No bigs.
No bigs.
No bigs. I, for one, am going to grab some dinner. You might have seen me like chewing on things during that last reading. But yes, please chat with each other. The one thing you all have in common is writing. That's what I always say. So you're not going to run out of things to talk about. And I think Dan is in the midst of putting people in breakout rooms. So super exciting. Excuse me, let me gather my spirits. So as we mentioned in the beginning of the event, every month we're featuring a new author for our Author's Corner program, and that includes reading at our monthly events. So we're super excited to introduce the author of the month for July is Megan Alpert, and she's a longtime member of the Inner Loop. And we're just so happy to support her and her latest book, which is phenomenal, The Animal at Your Side, which you can buy at Potter's House. Courtney's going to put the link in the chat. And you should definitely buy it and check her out at Potter's House and Shaw's Tavern and Reveler's Hour and Pie Shop DC. And check out our website, theinterlooplit.org/authors corner, to see all the amazing content that we have collected with Megan and hearing her perspective. She's so brilliant, and it's just so great to have her part of the program and to have her being a continuing member of the Inner Loop. Even though she's kind of moved far afield, she'll always be a part of the loop. So without further ado, in poetry, Megan Alpert.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay? Oh, suddenly I can't see anyone. Okay.
We hear you.
You can hear me? Great. So I'm so grateful to Courtney and Rachel and everybody at the Inner Loop for everything they're doing for Authors Corner. I never in a million years would have dreamed that my book was going to be in takeout menu, or my excerpts from my book would be in takeout menus, or that my book would be paired with a wine. And you guys have just thought of everything, and it's really like a dream come true, and something, the kind of publicity that a book from a small press never would have gotten otherwise. So thank you so much. And yeah, coming to this reading has me like, why did I leave DC? Should I be back there? We'll see. So I'm just going to read a couple poems from the book, The Animal at Your Side. And I guess I'll introduce this first one by telling you something that might seem unrelated, which is my aunt, Katie, who passed away a couple decades ago, had this dog that she told us was part German Shepherd and part wolf. And I was like obsessed with this as a kid. And later, when I was in my 20s, I was dating somebody who I really liked a lot, and told him about these dogs that my aunt had that were part wolf. And he said, oh, people tell people that to get them to buy dogs, but like, they're not really wolves. They're really just German Shepherds. And I was like, can you just let me have this? Like, this is an important thing that happened when I was a kid, and I'm not sure why we're arguing about it. And so anyway, that's like the secret history behind this poem. That's also really about the relationship and the things that I wanted this person to believe in, which he did not believe in. So this is called In Wolf Country. I give you what the wolves left: a tooth on a leather strap, a few stray hairs I found stuck to a tree, skull of a deer the dogs found and licked clean. Wild dogs, you say, coyotes, not wolves. You want to transition without symbols. I trace the sickle scars where your breasts were, where no one has ever touched you yet. They shine in the moonlight, streetlight, through the window. Later, I thumb the hairs on your razor and press my cheek to the rough place they came from. Sorry, you say, I'll shave again. And I watch through the mirror as you file the points down from your teeth. So the poems in the book kind of mythologize my personal experience. And a lot of them appear to be about grief after death. But they're about really grief after estrangement. And they kind of flit back and forth between wanting to leave home, wanting to stay far, far, far away, and wanting to return. And so I'm going to read a poem that's kind of about that wish, that desire to leave, and that like being always pulled back. This is called Motherless. Journey. slept against the grass walls, and dreamed my mother in a bright red dress, chasing me, our feet punctured by bees. Feet swelled to boats, and at the water, I took 10 steps before salt bled the wounds, the feet deflated, plunging me in. I sank, hair seaweed, hands wagged, virginity lost on the silver glint of a trout's back. Deeper still, in caves, I spoke my old name. It echoed from the limestone drippings. In the dark, my eyes reversed. I could float in this absence. No need of garage doors, key rings, or plates. But I looked up at my mother's blue face above the water. She held a basket of watercress, hard-boiled eggs. I was plunged upward, air scorching my lungs, from where I had stayed without need. Thank you so much.
No, it's not over already. Thank you so much, Megan. Again, tune into the Interloop Radio to hear us chat and hang out with Megan. And also our YouTube channel, we have a special interview between Megan and our outreach coordinator, Kira. And on our website, theinterlooplit.org/authors corner, you can read all of her content and find also her post at Washington Independent Review of Books, which I personally wholeheartedly agree with her premise. So check it all out. Get more of Megan all the time. Okay, next in fiction, Jacqueline Bangford.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm going to read an abbreviated version of a story called A Habitable Place, and it was published in Jellyfish Review a couple years back. A habitable place. What could go wrong, she said. Everything, I replied. Scientists called it an eyeball planet. Hot on one side, cold on the other. Life existed, we could exist, in the band where a constant day met with eternal night. Not eternal, Naima insisted, smiling. Everything ends. At orientation, Lieutenant Colonel White, a man resembling a biscuit in a sock, attempted to explain how we'd reach old One Eye. It's like traveling by slinky, he started. I wasn't much of a physicist. My mind wandered, and I was 5 years old again, my sister and I launching our slinky down the stairs to the dirt-smelling basement where our dad worked on the furnace. We weren't allowed to follow. We called for him to bring it back, and he did, over and over. Let's sign up, Naima had said years ago. They like pears, and there's a stipend. I argued that it seemed like a weird way to make a down payment on a house. As though we'd really go, it's like the draft, about as much chance you'd be called up and handed a gun. Put that way, it sounded almost sensible. We got the house. We started casually trying for a baby. When that didn't happen, we weren't too concerned. We weren't sure about that whole enterprise anyway. The ship gathers distance and time, coils it up, and you all spring forward together. So why is this a one-way trip? I asked, cutting White off. Naima looked mortified. Don't worry, guys, she said, smiling into the faces staring at us 2 by 2. Cold feet, but he'll be ready. We're committed. Don't worry. Turns out the one-way thing was a fuel issue. Also, our bodies would have to adapt to less gravity, and our children, when and if they came, would be unsuitable as earthlings, an effect that would crescendo over the generations. And there was a time issue, which meant we would likely arrive in our own past. I lost the thread again before he finished talking. The call came around the time we'd started debating getting a pet of some sort, maybe a ferret. She wanted to sell the house. What good is money going to do us, I asked. I preferred to leave the house to rot. My dad and my sister could come visit sometimes, a gravestone for my earth life. They say it helps you prepare to cut ties, Naima said. I don't want to prepare, I said. I'm not having this conversation again. Give the house away for all I care. Training starts 6 weeks from today, and none of this earthly shit comes with us. Training was indoctrination into this artificial culture they'd had 2 anthropologists draft up. We were expected to accept all non-reproductive couplings regardless of established relationships. So much for pairs. Productive sex was to be limited to an orgiastic setting with females aged at least 32, which would theoretically allow us to remain genetically diverse for longer and result in communal parentage. The anthropologists, 2 bespectacled women, had created foundational myths for us to help bolster the culture graft they were giving us. For you, these practices may feel unnatural. For your children's children, they'll be invisible, one of the women said. They had modeled our conflict resolution practices on those of geographically remote villages that lived in harmony for generations. There were myths for that too. The afternoon my sister, my dad, and I played with the slinky, the heater remained unrepaired, and the house sank into the cold dark of a winter evening. But I didn't mind the chill. Chill was a rare thing already in those days. The morning before we flew, Naima peed on a stick and a cross appeared. White arranged a team to scoop it out of her and put it on ice for possible reimplantation upon arrival. This was all covered by the contract. Will it survive the slinky stuff? I asked. Will any of you? He winked. We hope so, brother, we do. She squeezed my hand. This will all work out, she said. And maybe she's right. Maybe one day I'll even stand in a corner of that basement with my alien grandchild beside me, a crumpled earthling and a lithe stranger, hearing my dad quietly cursing the heater, the shush, shush, shush of a toy spring coming down the stairs. Or maybe not. Everything ends. Thank you.
I don't know. I feel like I'm going to dream about that slinky tonight. Shushing down the stairs. Thank you so much. That was a trip down into surreal land. Okay. Next in nonfiction, our very own Courtney Sexton filling in, because nonfiction can be hard to come by sometimes, especially in the middle of summer. So thanks, Court.
That was also like metaphorical. On cue.
Shut it.
Hey, okay, so this is a piece about dogs because they usually are. It is forthcoming in a magazine about bougie Southern living, even though I don't know, DC's not the South. But anyway, Rachel gave me some great feedback on it that I've not yet incorporated. It's a draft, and we're just gonna go. I'm bent over the sink washing my face when a tiny siren sings from my chest. Sonder has been watching me from the bathroom doorway, and at this he throws his coonhound head back and runs baying toward the window in search of the source. Well, shit, I think, as I pause to assess my pulse. Sonder and I are still getting to know each other, learn our respective tics and talks, so he has no idea that the siren is coming from a small bionic box in my breast, an ICD pacemaker implanted there to help manage the many rhythms of my unpredictable heart. 60 beats and steady. It's not me, it's you, I tell the machine. By now, Sonder has returned from the window and is following me again as I pick up the remote device that will enable me to send a transmission from the pacemaker to the doctor's office, where the technician can determine what the implant is whining about. As the dog hovers with worried curiosity, I glance reflexively toward a small cherry box atop the dresser. The box is brandished with a brass nameplate that reads Remy. Inside are the ashes of Sonder's predecessor. In one of those great plot twists of irony that the universe doles out, Remy's heart, like my own, was ultimately too big, and even all of the love and loyalty it held for nearly 10 years couldn't save him. But before that, he was the one who helped me mend and manage my own. I should back up. It was February 2010. After months of casually perusing the Pet Finder adoption site, I stopped my scrolling on a light-eyed, long-eared, speckle-faced puppy called Chance. Typically drawn to the spaniels and setters like those of my childhood, I didn't know what it was about this little plot hound that was so compelling, but I knew he was the one. I contacted the rescue group where he was being fostered with his mother and litter mates. They told me his mother was a rescue from a high kill situation in Georgia, and she'd given birth to the puppies in November, just 2 days before my own birthday. They'd all be at an adoption event the following weekend. I drove up from DC, where I'd recently moved for a job, to New Jersey to meet him. It was love at first bite. Rembrandt von Chance came home with me on Valentine's Day. Remy grew from floppy puppy peeing on snow mounds during a record-breaking southern winter into a long-eared, loudmouth, gun-shy hound who barked at fish and stood on his tiptoes for ice cream. He loved the river, he loved running through the woods, and he loved me. Remy and I became adults together. When we found each other, I was in many ways young and stereotypically starry-eyed 20-something trying to save the world. But in many ways I wasn't. I'd grown up with congenital heart disease, and my first experience in DC wasn't when I moved there as an idealistic young professional, but rather at age 5, when I was enrolled in a study of pediatric cardiomyopathy patients at the National Institutes of Health. That first winter of Remy's babyhood, one of the wires connecting my pacemaker to my heart broke and had to be surgically replaced, a risky procedure that involved laser cutting around the veins. Afterward, it was hard to haul around a young hound, and Remy seemed to intuit that. He was content to curl beside me under the covers and watch the snow. Remy was by my side through heartaches of other kinds too, loss of romantic partners, career fits and starts, familial struggles, writerly pains, as well as many of life's more beautiful moments. In truth, he was responsible for countless number of the latter. We co-piloted up and down the East Coast. We completed his training and made visits as a therapy dog team. We learned and ran the agility ring. He was as comfortable and charming in a Senate congressional office as he was rolling in horse shit on a Virginia farm. The year I turned 30, my world imploded. I'd lost faith in change making and quit my job at a wildlife conservation organization. My then partner ended our 8-year relationship, and I moved back in with my parents. What a millennial poster child I'd become, unemployed and licking my proverbial wounds while scraping to pay for health insurance to cover the real ones. At the time, there were 2 constants in my life, Remy, steady like a heartbeat, and writing. And there it was. For decades, philosophers and scientists alike have called our species' capacity for complex language a crucial marker of human uniqueness. As a writer, I was familiar with this adage and maybe even believed it. And yet, Remy spoke to me every day. His capacity for connection, for understanding, for reading a room and responding to it was undeniable. He knew my routines and often what I would do before I did. His communication was deliberate. When on alert, his tail curled into a question mark. When he wanted to divert my attention from the screen, he used his nose to unplug my computer. When he was annoyed, he looked me in the eye and barked until I changed my behavior. As I wrote my doctoral program application essay later that year, a lifetime ago now, not a day goes by that the mere fact of this other animals and my cohabitation, our shared existence and our fluid communication doesn't fill my mind with wonder. This is still true, and it still motivates my work each day now as an evolutionary anthropology researcher studying canine cognition and human-animal interactions. You see, among many other gifts, Remy helped me become unlost. He gave me, a lone woman in the world with a heart condition that is oftentimes restrictive, freedom to explore spaces and places I never could have alone. He also inspired a course correction, direction and purpose when my life lacked any. He was my compass, my comrade, my ever-ready, steady participant. I know I'm going over, I'm sorry. When the culprit of the distinctly familiar abnormal rhythm I'd noticed in Remy's jugular pulse one day, the spring before COVID, turned out to be a cardiac tumor, I was devastated. Losing him provoked a grief so heavy I didn't think I'd ever be whole again. But even his death, I realized, eventually opened my own heart to a new kind of connection. Everything I have learned from and because of Remy, I have a chance to give back, to use in building something with someone else abandoned, thrown on the side of a dirt road in Kentucky, Sonder, to use in trying to understand the inner workings of a dog mind and his heart. I turned back from Remy's ashes to Saunder's inquisitive copper face. Saunder, noun. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. 2, dog, your dog, half mountain cur, half Treen Walker coonhound, small for his breed. This slight reserved hound is different in so many ways from his predecessor, but his eyes, rimmed with heavy Gothic liner, await my next move. As the siren in my chest sings again, this time there is no baying. Instead, he holds his gaze and tilts his head. I hit send on the transmission device. The end. Thank you.
It's no surprise that Courtney's getting her PhD in dog communication, dog-human communication. Okay. Next in poetry, Taylor Johnson, I think. Are they here?
Taylor, are you here?
Saunder wants to know, is Taylor here? I didn't hear back from Taylor, so I don't think they're here. But they're amazing. They just won the...
I don't see Taylor here unless
Yeah.
they're here by another name.
Well, they're great. And they just won the, what is it? The Lambda Literary Award. Yeah, that's it. Okay, well, next time. Okay, so skipping right along to fiction, Danielle Stonehirsch.
Hello. So my story is called The Waffle House, and it appears in this book called This Is What America Looks Like, published by Washington Writers Publishing House, which is a nonprofit publisher here in Washington, D.C. And you can find the book in many places, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Politics and Prose, bookshop.org. And if you hate everything you hear from me tonight, that's okay, because there's like 50 other writers in this book that you might love. So I'm going to read from my story called The Waffle House. When the Waffle House closes, you know it's time to get the fuck out of town. Waffle Houses never close. Even FEMA recognizes that shit. It's called the Waffle House Index, and they have actually used it to determine how seriously we ought to be taking hurricanes. Just last year, I was driving home in the snow, regretting ignoring the warnings. I was peering through the windshield, squinty-eyed, wipers going at full power, crawling along thinking, Lord, here we are in my time of need. Please show yourself and light the way to heaven. As I wondered how on earth I was going to recognize my exit through the blinding white, there was the light of the Waffle House, right before exit 3, guiding the way home. I passed it slowly, so slowly I could count the people sitting in the grimy booths, backs pressed to the cracking red plastic. I knew I was going to make it. The Waffle House is America's guide, the light in the storm. The Waffle House is also my employer, although for $8.46 an hour, I don't feel a huge sense of loyalty. I also work at Target for $8.50, but that extra 4 cents they give me over minimum wage buys them exactly 4 extra cents worth of my gratitude. And we all know that in America today, 4 cents isn't worth shit. Before my grandnana passed, she told me stories about penny candies and nickel stores, but all I see these days are $5 Generals along the highway, and I have to work a full hour to afford a bag of Hershey's Kisses. For $8.46 an hour, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, I get to clean literal shit off the countertops and the bathroom floors, so I can head to Target and clean literal shit off their counters and floors, so I can keep the lights on another week for the cats and for Jill. Jill used to clean literal shit off the floors and counters at a Denny's before a drunk guy in a parking lot bashed her head against the brick wall so hard she was out for a week and never quite made it all the way back. Tuesdays, though. Tuesdays, I leave the Waffle House at 6 p.m. and head home to a bottle of wine that tastes like cans. And Jill and I watch movies until midnight, the same ones we watched when we were kids because we still have Mom's old VHS player and the tapes we cleaned out of her basement before we had to sell the house. Today is Tuesday, and as I mop the bathroom where some kid who was too short for the toilet tried to pee, I just keep reminding myself, today is Tuesday. Jill and I will watch Escape from Witch Mountain, Clueless, The Fox and the Hound. When we watch, she'll remember before, and cleaning shit today will feel less shitty. There's crud all over the countertop by 5, and I have to lean in with the rag, pressing and scraping my fingernails through the dirty cloth. These people are animals, most of them tourists in for a week of Disney magic and pampering, And while everyone should get a vacation now and again, it's no reason to treat those of us who live here like the trash I know they call us when they head back to New York or Chicago. Or when they sit here thinking trash can't hear them in between demanding more coffee, more sugar, more syrup. A family sits in the corner booth, both kids wearing the Mickey Mouse ears and flinging syrup from their forks onto the napkin holders in the ketchup bottle. The parents ignore them, poring over a brochure or a map, figuring out how to make their day perfect. Isabel in the kitchen shouts at me that the order for booth 6 is ready, and I drop the rag and grab the plates on the counter. I can't carry them all at once, so I'll have to come back for the side of bacon. It's a short distance to booth 6, but there's an obstacle course of syrup and a fork on the floor, a chair pulled out too far from the table on my right, and a wet spot at the end where Daisy finished cleaning ketchup just 10 minutes earlier. I make it through like a fucking gazelle and lay the plates down. The booth seats 2 boys and 2 girls I can only assume are their dates. They think they're hot shit with their class rings and their uneven bangs, and one of them has his hand in the girl's lap, right in her crotch as if I can't see. Before I finish setting out the last one, the other one, left arm over his girl's shoulder like he actually gets these in public, leans forward. "Where's my fucking bacon?" he says, spit flying onto the table, hash browns. "I'm getting it now," I tell him. "I ordered bacon," he says, but he's looking at his friends now. "You better not charge me for bacon you never brought." "I didn't forget the bacon. I'm going back to get it." "You lying to me about bacon? Like this job is so hard? You fuck up just bringing food people order to the people who ordered it?" He laughs and they laugh with him, short, breathless giggles that set my teeth grinding as I walk away. It's hardly the worst I've heard around here, and it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. I call Isabel over from the other end of the counter and hold up the bacon. "Booth 6 doesn't want this anymore." She rolls her eyes and moves it off the counter. We're supposed to throw that stuff away, but not all of us have much waiting at home, so untouched, rejected plates are Waffle House gold. I turn my back to the counter and lean against a stool, smug in my petty revenge. These kids think they're going so much farther than me, but the truth is there's no way I don't come across at least one of them 3 years from now, pushing a mop ahead of me at the Target, cleaning up shit while I stock the shelves. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, you had me like get the fuck out of town.
I know. I don't think there's a story in existence that has a better opening line. Okay, I'm gonna switch my view to gallery so I can see all the beautiful faces, and I just want to, give a little visual hooray for all the readers tonight, because wow, this has been an outstanding week.
What a crew.
Wow. Yeah. Courtney was super worried that we were going to have a low turnout tonight, but we had an amazing turnout with 55 audience members in the beginning, and we've had a good holdout. So thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to all of our amazing readers. I mean, you guys really make these events so special to us. It's so great to hear just what you all are working on. It's so inspiring. It's amazing. And Tope, you're amazing. Thank you for being such an amazing literary citizen, and just being in the community, and for being an amazing writer and inspiring.
Amazing, really amazing.
It's amazing. I'm sorry, I'm on vacation. I can't. I only got one.
No, it's true though. You all inspire us to keep doing what we're doing. So it's this great circle of literary love. And every time we say this every time, but it's like anxious and worried and overworked and doing 5 things, and then we get here and you're here and it's beautiful. So
it's such a respite from our lives, and yeah, we appreciate you.
Sure.
So we'll see you next month, hopefully in person. It's in Parkview, Upper Northwest DC, at Sunny's in the back, and that's August.
In the back of Sunny's.
In the back of Sunny's. It's easy. August 17th. Our website, theinnerlooplet.org, super easy to remember. There's all of our events. There's our Authors Corner project, our podcast, everything that we got going on, you can find there. And we're on Instagram, Facebook, all of that.
And we dropped a bunch of links and everything in the chat throughout the evening, but feel free, for those of you who had access to the Facebook event, you can go through and post in the discussion if you want to drop links and stuff like that there too. Or you're welcome to send them to us and we can pass them on via the social.
Yeah, if you're an Instagram guy or gal, just tag us and we'll repost.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Another round of applause for everyone. Turn those speakers on.
Yay!
Yay! Everybody stay well. Enjoy the rest of this heat wave.